In the middle of the San Francisco Bay, surrounded by icy, unforgiving waters, lies a jagged island of stone, Alcatraz. From a distance, it looks lifeless, a chunk of rock floating in the mist. But up close, beneath the cries of gulls and the crash of waves, something darker seems to breathe. The locals call it the Rock. The spirits call it home. It wasn't always a prison. When the U.S. Army first built its fort there in 1852, Alcatraz was meant to defend the bay. Its cannons once faced the horizon, ready to protect San Francisco from enemies that never came. But the true war was not out there. It was within those walls. As years passed, the island turned into a military prison. During the Civil War, soldiers accused of treason, desertion, and mutiny were locked away. Cold winds howled through the narrow corridors, and the cries of the punished echoed across the sea. Yet, even then, guards whispered of strange sounds, chains clanking in empty cells, moans drifting through the darkness. Some said the island itself was cursed, but it was in 1933, when Alcatraz became a federal prison, that the curse deepened and the Rock earned its fearsome name. The transformation was brutal and perfect. Concrete replaced brick. Iron replaced wood. Every corner, every corridor, every cell was designed for control. There were no shadows unplanned, no sounds unchecked, no walls that could be breached. Alcatraz became escape-proof, a place where hope came to die. The first prisoners arrived chained and silent, ferried across the cold bay under heavy guard. They called it the Devil's Island of America. Among them were men whose names would live forever in crime history. Al Capone, the King of Chicago, George Machine Gun Kelly, the smooth-talking kidnapper, Alvin Karpis, the ruthless killer of the Barker Karpis gang, and Robert Stroud, known as the Birdman of Alcatraz. The cells were small, 5 feet by 9. Steel bars, a cot, a toilet. That was it. Prisoners woke at 6:30 a.m., worked all day, ate silently, and were locked in by 5:30 p.m. lights out by 9. And when the lights died, the ghosts came out. Guards claimed to hear footsteps pacing in empty corridors. Inmates reported hearing soft whispers from the vents. A few even said they saw a figure standing at the edge of their cells, watching, waiting. One night, Al Capone himself, once untouchable, was found shaking uncontrollably in his cell. He whispered to a guard, "He's here again, the man from the massacre." Some say it was the ghost of James Clark, his victim from the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Capone would sit alone in the prison yard, talking to thin air, playing his banjo, trying to drown out the voices only he could hear. The Rock was supposed to hold the worst of men, but it also held something worse than them all. Deep inside cell block C, beyond the steel doors and echoing halls, lies a corridor so dark and cold that even the guards hated going near it. They called it the Hole. This was solitary confinement, the end of the line. Inmates sent here were stripped naked, thrown into pitch-black cells with no bed, no light, no sound except the pounding of their own hearts. Days could stretch into weeks, and madness became a companion. Guards told stories in whispers. One, about a man known only as Cell-14 DS prisoner, still chills the bones of those who work there today. He was a violent man, always fighting, always shouting. One night, after a brutal outburst, he was thrown into the hole for punishment. But within hours, the guards heard him screaming. "There's something in here," he yelled. "It's got glowing eyes. It's in the corner." They laughed at first. Everyone sees things in the dark. But as the night went on, the screams turned to begging, then to gurgling terror, then silence. In the morning, they found him dead, strangled, his face frozen in horror, and on his neck, deep scratches as if from claws. No one ever confessed. No one could, because he had been alone. After that, no guard would enter the hole alone. And to this day, those who walk near cell 14D claim to see two glowing eyes watching from blackness. When Alcatraz closed in 1963, it was supposed to be the end of its nightmares. But the island didn't sleep. Decades later, tourists began visiting the old prison. The air felt heavy. The walls seemed to hum with memories. Tour guides reported hearing cell doors slamming even when no one was near. Some felt icy hands brush their arms. Others heard screams echoing to the corridors. Screams that couldn't be human. Cell block C became the focus of the hauntings. Visitors described feeling watched, as if unseen prisoners still stare from their cells. Some saw faint shapes moving, gray, hollow faces behind bars. One woman fainted after hearing a whisper in her ear. The recording from her audio tour caught it clearly. Get out. In the dining hall, people often hear the clatter of trays, the low murmur of invisible voices. The old showers drip, though no pipes feed them anymore. And at times, the unmistakable sound of banjo music floats faintly through the halls, soft haunting like a lullaby from the dead. Guards who once worked there say they heard it too. Capone, one said, still plays his banjo in the dark. On foggy nights, the island seems alive. The fog rolls in thick and heavy, curling around the watchtowers like ghostly fingers. The sea churns angrily below, and the wind carries whispers. Those who visit at dusk say they can feel it. The pulse of Alcatraz. The cold in the air isn't just temperature, it's presence. A paranormal research team once stayed overnight to record evidence. What they captured defied logic. In the D-block corridor, their infrared cameras caught a shadowy figure pacing back and forth. Their thermal sensors showed cold spots forming human shapes. The temperature dropped suddenly, their breath visible in the air. One investigator, Mark, felt something touch his shoulder. Stop it, he said, thinking it was his teammate. But when he turned around, no one was there. Moments later, a cell door slammed shut by itself. The group tried to leave, but the main door jammed. The lights flickered violently. On the audio recorder, a low growl was captured, deep, guttural, animalistic. Then a whisper, faint but clear, "You can't leave." They ran. The next morning, when the park ranger reviewed their footage, one frame stood out. In the corner of the hallway, two glowing eyes shone from the darkness, exactly where Cell 14D used to stand. Tour guides know the stories by heart. They warn visitors not to stray too far, not to linger near the hole, not to mock the dead. Still, curiosity wins. One young man, on a dare, locked himself briefly inside a cell. "I'll last 2 minutes," he laughed. 30 seconds later, he screamed. When they opened the door, he was pale, shaking. "Someone whisper my name," he said. Visitors described the sensation of being followed, a breath on their necks, of icy fingers brushing their hands. Some say they hear their names called softly, as if the island knows them. And always, always the sound of footsteps, measured, deliberate, echoing endlessly down empty halls. Even the sea around Alcatraz seems cursed. Fishermen have seen ghostly lights glowing beneath the waves at night. Some claim to hear screams coming from the island when the fog is thickest. Perhaps it's a memory of those who tried to escape, the desperate men who dove into the freezing waters and were never seen again. The bay keeps its secrets, just as a rock keeps its dead. In 1962, 3 men, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, attempted the impossible to escape Alcatraz. They carved holes in their cell walls, made a raft from raincoats, and vanished into the fog. The FBI declared them dead, drowned by the bay, but no bodies were ever found. Since then, on certain misty nights, guards have reported seeing 3 figures on the shoreline, staring toward San Francisco, their clothes dripping, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. When approached, they fade into mist. Some say these are the spirits of the escapees. Still try to leave. Others say they are something else entirely, the island's way of reminding the living that no one truly escapes the rock. Today, Alcatraz is one of the most visited landmarks in America. But when the last ferry leaves and the sun sets, the true island awakens. The corridors whisper, the cells breathe, the air grows colder than the sea itself. Security guards, the few who stay overnight, tell stories they wish they could forget. Doors slamming in unison, footsteps walking above their heads, voices humming through the vents. One guard years ago refused to go back after hearing a man whisper, "It's my turn now," inside an empty cell. Tourists leave with uneasy smiles, joking about ghosts, but many admit they can't sleep that night. Some say they wake from nightmares of drowning, of walls closing in, of unseen eyes staring from the dark. Because once you walk the halls of Alcatraz, it never truly lets you go. The rock still stands, silent, cold, unbroken. The seagulls circle, the waves crash, the fog returns again and again, like a curtain hiding the truth. Every inch of that island holds a story. Every stone remembers a sound of suffering, of defiance, of madness. Some spirits stay because they can't leave. Some stay because they don't want to. And if you listen carefully, even from the shore, you can hear them. The faint clang of metal doors, the rattle of chains, the echo of a banjo playing somewhere deep within the walls. It is said that at midnight, if you stand outside cell block C and whisper, "Who's here?" you will hear a voice reply. Sometimes it laughs. Sometimes it cries. Sometimes it whispers your name. Because Alcatraz isn't just a prison. It's a promise that no one escapes. Not the prisoners, not the guards, not even the ghosts. So if you ever visit, tread carefully. When you feel the cold against your neck, when you hear footsteps in the dark, when the wind carries a whisper that sounds almost human, don't look back. Because on the rock, something might be looking back at you